Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 16th of January of 2026. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Ukraine. The situation is critical. First of all, we're talking about the energy infrastructure. The Ukrainian authorities are trying to do everything they can with the purpose to stabilize the situation, but they don't know for sure, first of all, whether they're able to do this, and the second thing, if there is a need to restore the energy infrastructure. Maybe there is no need to do this because everybody in the world, especially the Ukrainians, especially the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, knows for sure that in coming days the Russians will launch another massive missile attack through the territory of Ukraine, which most likely either will destroy the energy infrastructure of Ukraine completely or will deal a critical damage that will lead probably to partial collapse of the entire system. So the question is what to do. The Ukrainian authorities are trying to stabilize the situation, and Zelensky, for example, from his side, used his strong cards, used his trump cards. So he has several. The first one is that Zelensky is relaunching the negotiation process. You know that every time when there is a crisis, when there are problems, when the Russians are taking another city under complete control, we're talking about big city, Ukraine launches or restarts the negotiation track. According to information we have, a delegation including Budanov and Umerov is heading to the United States of America to discuss Trump's plan for Ukraine with advisors. So this is the beginning of the new negotiation process. Right after, the Ukrainian authorities will travel to the Russian Federation, where they're going to have a meeting with the representatives of the Russian Federation. During this process, when Ukraine shows that Ukraine is ready for the negotiation process, the Russians reduces their military and drone activities. Another important thing is the second card that Zelensky has is the foreign visitors. Every time when the situation is critical, the let's say authorities, the top level authorities of the European countries began traveling to Ukraine with the purpose to make videos with Zelensky and to show that the European authorities are on the territory of Kyiv. So that is why they're trying to force the Russians not to attack Ukraine. And usually it works because Russia never attacks, or I don't remember, if correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that since the beginning of the special military operation, the Russians haven't launched even a single massive attack with drones and missiles, while the European high representatives are on the territory of Ukraine. So today the Czech representatives came to Ukraine, and they were talking with Zelensky about the situation, and Zelensky once again was talking about the peaceful process. Zelensky was trying to exchange the Donbas for joining of the European Union, but later the Czech president Petr Pavel stated at the same briefing that Ukraine is ready to make a series of painful concessions for the sake of achieving peace, without specifying what those are. So this is something like a Czech Republic air defense system, and of course if the Czech representatives are on the territory of Kyiv, most likely the Russians will not attack today, which means that the Ukrainian authorities and different special services have another day to stabilize the situation, and then they'll see what is going to be next. But once again, I'm not sure that the Ukrainian authorities understand what exactly they're doing, because they also understand and they see that in coming days Russians will launch another massive attack. Once again, as we discussed during the previous video, the next 7 days are going to be the worst days of the winter, the coldest day of the winter of 2026. The temperature will fall below zero till -20 by Celsius. The situation is already critical. It's very difficult to understand what is going to happen during these days and what is going to happen if Russians attack Ukraine once again. Anyway, let's wait and see. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the northern part of Ukraine. During the previous 24 hours or during the previous days, the Russians managed to destroy another HIMARS system. This video was published by the pro-Russian sources today during the 16th of January 2026, and here we can see how the HIMARS system was attacking, according to pro-Russian sources, in the direction of the territory of the Bryansk region. When the system was discovered, the Russians Russians launched a drone, and a few hours or a few minutes later, this HIMARS system was destroyed. It seems that the system was destroyed by a Russian drone. So this episode took place right exactly in this area. And once again, I would like to remind you that this is not just the northern parts of Ukraine. This is a launching site. This is the launching site. The Ukrainians are using this territory to attack deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation with drones, missiles, with everything they can. So that is why the Russians, most likely before the end of the conflict between the Russian Federation and Ukraine, will try to cut this territory or to create a buffer zone in this area with the purpose to force the Ukrainians to fall back and to reduce the Ukraine's possibilities to attack deep inside of Russia. And most likely this is the reason why the Russians continue their offensive operation in the most northeastern parts of Ukraine. During the previous 24 hours, pro-Ukrainian sources adjusted their map in this area once again. Let's discuss the situation in this area once again since the beginning. The first report that Russians entered this part of Ukraine occurred somewhere around the 4th of January of 2026. This information was provided by pro-Ukrainian sources, and according to that report, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly around the village of Komarovka and in the southwestern direction. On the 14th of January of 2026, this information was also confirmed by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. And based on that report, we adjusted the map. So these are the changes between the 13th and the 14th of January. And 2 days after, so today on the 16th of January, pro-Ukrainian sources improved and increased the gray zone in this area. And according to the latest update, during the previous days, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly to the south of the settlement of Bela Bereza. It seems that now the Russians are tasked to establish complete control over the territory, let's say to the south, to the bottom of this red line. So this is going to be a first foothold of the armed forces of the Russian Federation in the area of the Ukraine's launching site. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kharkiv region. It seems that the situation in this area intensified. During the previous 24 hours, according to the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, Ukrainians launched more than 100 drones in the direction of the Belgorod region and Ryazan regions. The Russians managed to bring down 106 drones. At the same time, the Russians struck back, and the sources are saying that the Russians managed to destroy completely the Kharkiv power station number 5. According to Zelensky, currently there are 400,000 people without electricity and without heat in the area of the city of Kharkiv. Once again, the mayor of the city of Kharkiv stated that a very powerful and a very big object of critical infrastructure was destroyed. Once again, most likely he was talking about the Kharkiv power station number 5. At the same time, the Russians continued their offensive operation, and during the previous 24 hours, several pro-Russian sources stated that as a result of clashes, Russians managed to improve their position significantly in the area of the settlement of Volchansky Hutory. Most likely in coming days, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will confirm information about additional progress on the ground, and most likely the settlement are about to be captured by Russians. Now let's move further and let's talk about the city of Kupiansk. As of the end of the 16th of January 2026, the situation is still critical. And currently, nobody knows, when talking about sources who base their reports based on the open source information, nobody knows for sure what is the status of the city of Kupiansk and what is happening there. Pro-Ukrainian sources are showing us one picture and one story. Pro-Russian sources are telling us completely different story. But today, a very important situation took place in the area of the responsibilities of the Group of Forces West. Today, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation came to the headquarters of the Group of Forces West, where he was reported about the situation on the ground. And the commander of the Group of Forces West stated that everything is okay. He stated that everything is okay, that the Russians are advancing, that one village after another is falling in Russia's hands, and that the Russians are about to finish the battle not just for the city of Kupiansk, but most likely the Russians will begin offensive in the direction of the city of Kharkiv inside of the Kharkiv city limits. So this is how the report of the commander of the Group of Forces West sounds like. And during this report, the Minister of Defense interrupted the commander of the Group of Forces West, and he asked him a simple question. overall, I understand that the Kupiansk is currently clearing mode, right? He asked the commander of the Group of Forces West, and he received confirmation. The commander of the Group of Forces West confirmed this information. I'm trying to tell you that's not the situation that Ukrainians are showing us the wrong picture, or the Russians are showing the wrong picture. I'm just trying to tell you that currently there is a very huge scandal between the Group of Forces West, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, the General Staff, and the Minister of Defense. And now they're trying to find who is telling the truth and who is lying. So most likely this situation that we can see right now in the area of the city of Kupiansk cannot last forever. We believe that in coming days the real situation in the city of Kupiansk will be revealed, and most likely some commanders of the Group of Forces West will lose their positions, because currently and most likely the situation in the area of the city of Kupiansk doesn't look like the situation that was described by the Group of Forces West, by its commander. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next, but the situation is very difficult. Now let's talk about the Barova direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly in the western Lugansk region, and now, according to information we have, there are no more settlements that are under complete control of the armed forces of Ukraine. There are settlements only under control of the Russian troops and that are located in the gray zone, so which means that most likely the Russians are about to finish the battle for the entire Lugansk region, and most likely in coming days they will announce this. As for the Slaviansk direction, the Russians continue offensive operation. And during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very important updates. First of all, the Russians continue bombing and attacking the logistics of the armed forces of Ukraine around the city of Liman. In this video, we can see how the Russians managed to discover another bridge that Ukrainians were using for the logistic purposes, and the Russians attacked this bridge with missile or with bomb. So these logistic roads took place between the villages of Bogorodichne and Svyatogorsk. This is one of the last supply lines that Ukrainians still use for their defense purposes support. They're trying to hold the city of Liman and the outskirts of the city for as long as possible, but we see that due to lack of logistic and manpower, the Russians managed to improve their positions inside of the city limits of Liman. During the previous 24 hours, as you can see, additional changes on the ground were recorded, and this information was provided by pro-Russian sources. According to this report, the Russians improved their positions significantly in the eastern part of the city, and the Russians continue advancing. Furthermore, during the previous 24 hours, lots of videos were published about the process of how the Russians are securing the territory with FPV drones. As you can see, Ukrainians suffer huge losses. The Russians during the previous days managed to destroy lots of equipment that Ukrainians were trying to redeploy in the direction of the city of Liman with reinforcements and reserves, and it seems that the battle of the city of Liman is entering its decisive phase, and most likely now the Russians will advance much faster in comparison with the previous period of time. Another important piece of news is that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Zakitne. Just yesterday we discussed that Russians improved their positions around the villages of Dibrova and Ozerne, and today we received the report that the Russians managed to establish complete control over the village of Zakitne. This information was provided by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. They stated that the Group of Forces South managed to take the village under complete control, and a few hours later we received the video from the eastern part of the settlement of Zakitne, where we can see a Russian soldier that raised the Russian flag right exactly at this point. So, telling the truth, this is not something that we expected, because the eastern part of the city of Zakitne was captured by Russians a long time ago, and of course everybody was waiting for a flag or flags in the western part of Zakitne, in this area around these elevations. So currently I'm not sure that the Russians managed to secure the village of Zakitne completely, and we believe that maybe the western part of Zakitne either in the gray zone or still under control of the armed forces of Ukraine. Anyway, based on the report published by the Minister of Defense, we adjusted the map, and let's wait and see what is going to be next. And of course we are waiting for geolocations from the most western part of the settlement, because this one is the most important part, because this part is located right in front of these elevations, these strategical elevations, because and due to the fact that Ukrainians still control strongholds around this settlement of of Krivoluka. This is the reason why the Russians are moving so slowly to the west of the city of Siversk. Only when the Russians take under complete control these strategical hills, only then the Russians will be able to begin advancing very fast further in the western direction towards the city of Slaviansk itself. Another important direction that has activated recently is the territory between the cities of Solidar, Bakhmut, and Slaviansk. We are talking about the territory, about the road, around the road MO3. During the previous days, the Russians, as you can see, according to these changes, managed to improve their position significantly. So this is the picture, this is the situation by the end of the 12th of January, and it seems that this is the moment when the Russians launched their major offensive operation. And this is how exactly the map been changed during this period of time. So this is the end of the 13th of January, this is the end of the 14th, this is the end of the 15th, and this is the end of the 16th of January of 2026. According to these reports, the Russians during the previous 24 hours managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Minkovka. This information was provided by pro-Russian sources, by almost every single pro-Russian source, so we expect that in coming days or maybe even hours, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will confirm this information as well. This is a very important stronghold around the settlement of Minkovka, which opens the roads further in the northwestern direction towards the city of Alexandrovka from the south and towards the city of Slaviansk and Kramatorsk. Most likely the Russians will not cross the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal in this area because this area is pretty well fortified, so most likely the Russians will continue offensive operation further just in the direction of Alexandrovka and then further in the direction of Nikolaevka. So now the Russians are tasked to take under complete control the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal. This is the first priority for the Russians due to many reasons, due to just the, let's say, strategical purposes of further offensive operations towards the city of Slaviansk, and of course from the perspective of water supply through the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal in the direction of the city of Donetsk, because there are still problems with water supply in the city of Donetsk that haven't been resolved since 2014, and the control over this Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal will resolve lots of problems and questions for population of the city of Donetsk and of the entire Donetsk region. So that is why the Russians are tasked to do this as soon as possible, to create a gap, and before summer or even autumn of 2026 to restore the water supply through this arteria. As for the Konstantinovka-Dobropolye direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received almost anything. There are very heavy clashes, but as you can see, just several pictures, videos of fab attacks, and that's it. But I would like to remind you that yesterday, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation came to the area of the responsibilities of the Group of Forces Center, where he had conversation with commanders, and most likely they were discussing the final preparations or the plan of further offensive operation towards the city of Dobropolye. So due to this inspection, due to this visit, we believe that in coming days the Group of Forces Center will resume their offensive operation in the northwestern directions with the purpose to get to the borders between the regions of Donetsk, Kharkiv and Dnipropetrovsk. Now let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction. During the previous 24 hours, we received changes, and they're coming from the area of the river of Gaichur. The Russian sources stated that as a result of clashes, the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Aleno-Konstantinovka. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. The Russians, as you can see, managed to improve their position significantly since the beginning of the 14th of January. And today, according to the video and according to the Ministry of Defense report, we adjusted the map. So currently there is just one village left along the river of Gaichur. We are talking about the village of Priluki, but as you can see, according to different mappers, according to pro-Russian sources and natural mappers, this village is already in the gray zone, which means that most likely in coming days the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will confirm complete control over the territory, and since that moment the Russians will establish complete control over the river of Gaichur on the Ukrainian side of the river between the cities of Gulay-Polye and Pokrovsk. So which is a very important, which means that the Russians with this will finish the creation of their foothold, and then they will be able to start their strategical offensive operation in the direction of the city of Zaporozhye itself. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds that we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.